A very good afternoon to all. Welcome, Professor Avtar Singh ji.
Anji, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very
Sir,
much.
today we are going to begin with Surfacing by Margaret
Yes.
Atwood.
Yes. Definitely.
Because I,
We,
I request you kindly begin with your talk on surfacing.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Good afternoon to every one of you. From Africa, we move on to Canada. Canada has produced an unusual, even a predominant number of women writers. The main purpose of women's literature in Canada has been to project women at the center of their own historical experience, making them dynamic interpreters of their own lives. The factors that shape the Canadian consciousness, what are those factors? Wilderness, domestic security, and national identity are an integral part of the female psyche, which they partly inherit from their own particular selfhood. Internationally acclaimed Canadian novelist, short story writer, poet, and essayist Margaret Atwood is a major voice of modern feminist movement. Her enormous work places her in the category of technically accomplished women writers. Her controlled, careful, and elegant writing is blissfully endowed with creative imagination. Margaret Atwood exposes the injustices done to women in the male dominated society by making her women characters go through very harsh circumstances and by portraying men as the manipulative oppressors in life. She extends the implications of the word woman to include all the exploited and oppressed people in the world. In her Curse of Eve, you know, just as we have, Curse of Adam. In Adam's fall, we say we fell all. So in the Curse of Eve, or what I learned at school, Woman on Woman, this is edited by Anne B. Shettier, Woman on Women. Atwood strongly points out, for a long time men in literature have been seen as individuals, women merely examples of gender. Perhaps it is time to take the capital W of woman, OFF, of woman. To man, woman's mind has no value. Only her body is important for him because he can use it for his own pleasure. He has nothing to do with the feelings and emotions of woman. He continuously humiliates her just to satisfy his male ego. Woman suffers all this because she is taught to remain silent from the very beginning. She is coerced into giving up her rights in the name of peace and harmony in life. If she shows the slightest resistance, she is condemned and isolated for her entire life, for the whole of her life. So, feminine sensibility offers an alternative to patriarchal thinking. It aims at abolishing social disparities between men and women, not by overthrowing a particular government or structure, but by substituting one way of thinking by another. Their objective is to secure for women an access to decision-making process. Educated women shall go into society to facilitate its progress and development towards a better tomorrow. Feminists assert that there is no area of life, however intimate, that cannot be understood in terms of social organization, as opposed to mere biological necessity. Women are biological necessity. They want women to assimilate the change in society. Margaret Atwood maintains that the female characters in Western fiction, both by male and female writers, are of a particular type. which she calls the solitary weeper, that passive female victim to whom everything gets done and whose only activity is running away. These passive women have no motives. Like stones or trees, they simply are, the good ones purely good and the bad ones purely bad. They are generally static, as dynamism is left to their male counterparts. While a man is seen as an individual, a woman is seen merely as an example of gender, an angel, a witch, or a Mother Earth. At the thematic level, Atwood's fiction, is widespread. She wrote her first novel, Bluebeard's Egg. Then she wrote Bodily Harm. Then she wrote Cat's Eye. Then she wrote Dancing Girls and Other Stories. The Edible Woman was another novel by her, Surfacing, Handmaid's Tale, Lady Oracle, Life Before Man. So her fiction examines themes related to the politics of gender such as enforced alienation of women under patriarchy, the delimiting definition of woman as a function, the patriarchal attempt to annihilate the selfhood of woman's quest for identity, selfhood of woman, the gradual carving out of female space by women through various strategies, and women's quest for identity, self-definition, and autonomy. So feminism, like the postmodernist spirit, is a self-existent knowledge that busts upon the sluice of suppression and injustice, vigorously manifesting itself and the play of its forms and forces. Woman's life, like man's life, is rooted in movements, and it is not rooted in an axiomatic tradition. Hence, feminism sparks off a controversy in the man-woman relationship, and conflict between tradition and feminism is inevitable in the postcolonial, postmodernist thinking. The conflict is evident in the words of Margaret Atwood. This above all, she exhorts, all women to refuse to be victims. This above all, to refuse to be a victim. Unless I can do that, I can do nothing. I have to recant. Give up the old belief that I am powerless. And because of it, nothing I can do will ever hurt anyone. Withdrawing is no longer possible, and the alternative is death. Unquote. Feminism thus is, in its nature, the self-aware and self-determining light and power of a woman's consciousness. The right to determine independently with regard to at least to her body came uppermost in the minds of women, and it was regarded as a revolt against tradition. So Margaret Atwood's Surfacing, which was published in 1972, when the legal sanction to abortion was still debatable. The novel addresses itself to its traumatic effects on a woman's psyche due to suppression of artistic sensibility and abortion by force. Surfacing is the revolt of the nameless woman. The heroine of this novel is a nameless character. You don't have name, you don't have an identity of your own. If you don't have name, you don't have identity. So this nameless heroine, is the novel addresses itself to the traumatic acts of a woman's psyche due to suppression of artistic sensibility and abortion by force. Surfacing is the revolt of a nameless woman artist protagonist against the denial of women's professional aspirations as well as motherhood. This is very important. Both are denied. She is not regarded as a great artist in her life, and she is denied the rights of being a good mother. The novel decries man's imposition on woman in respect of her choices of a profession, marriage, and motherhood, which cripples her intellectuality, emotionally, and morally. It pleads for woman's individuality and autonomy in respect of choice of profession and motherhood. This is what the novel does. So, Surfacing is a great feminist novel, capable of transcending the world of feminism. The distinct feminist voice of Surfacing is heard through a desperate and anguished voice of the protagonist, who surfaces from the depths of exploitation and oppression. The novel is structured like a journey. Every novel is a journey of the nameless protagonist, in which, through her association with the people and nature, she is aware of the different victims and victimizers, victim and victimizers both. In the final analysis, she becomes a metaphor for all those who are exploited and abused because of their powerlessness. Because woman is not a powerful human being, so it's the powerlessness of woman that is highlighted here. She wants to give birth to a truly human child outside the orbit of marriage, whom she would bring up as an artist. Thus, as early as 1972, when this novel was published, the woman in Canada desired to be a free and autonomous being through motherhood. Motherhood is a great blessing and is an assertion of self. You can differ with one's paternity, but you cannot differ with one's maternity. It is said that maternity is certain, paternity is a matter of opinion. The protagonist not only struggles to survive in society, but also ambitiously attempts to organize all the victims to protest against the oppression of victimizers. Surfacing thus is the quest of a nameless woman for a revolt. It is more than a revolt in the context where the where the colonial hangover remains strongly embedded in the psyche of the woman, that is, the nameless protagonist. So, this novel, men writers contrast to that and define writing as really male thing to be doing. And if you are a woman doing it, this is what Margaret Atwood says, if you are a woman doing it, that really threatens their position, considering they have gone to all this trouble to tell anybody who sort of scorns their activity, and that's what they are doing, is really very hairy-chested. People can't say you have a watercolor feminine sensibility. They will say something like she thinks like a man. I mean, they seem to find it very hard if they want to say something that is good. To say that it is good and also admit that the writer is female, they seem to feel that they have to make you an honorary male if they are going to say good to you. Very good, I should say. So while men command resources and make decisions, women are forced to depend on them for survival. This makes them powerless and vulnerable to male control and subjugation. They have to live in a state of nothingness. In such male-dominated societies, female feticide, female infanticide are the most common things to be seen. Very important. The anguished cries of of the oppressed woman do not hurt the conscience of the dominating gender. Women's status is low because of the intense patriarchal bias against them. Furthermore, the socio-religious conditions glorifying the subjugation of women compounds their predicament. This unequal social order is propped by the religious fundamentalists of all hues, increases the male audacity. The sexist tradition and customs are designed from time to time with a view to perpetuating the male supremacy over women. All the scriptures of the world, including the Bible, the Quran, and the controversial Manusmriti, have defined the role of women, putting them in the confines of the household. They have to live life not of their own choice but by compulsion. Due to this miserable condition of women in the male-dominated administrative system, they become a metaphor for all those who are exploited, abused, and marginalized. The male chauvinists uphold in egalitarian class system and prescribe such caste taboos which hinder the legitimate rights of innocuous people. When women realize their conscious and deliberate subordination by men, it did not take long for her to lodge protest against this. So surfacing is also a story of one such woman who refuses to be a solitary weeper because her father disappeared in the northern wilderness and her mother died long ago when she was a small child. At the news of her father's disappearance, the unnamed female protagonist returns with her lover Joe, Paul, and another couple, David and Anna, to the isolated cabin where she spent her childhood. They then begin to search for clues as to whereabouts of her missing father. Various possibilities of his disappearance are examined. He may have gone in the woods, this is one possibility. Living alone for a long time, he may have gone mad, or he may have died in the wilderness. Though tired of the search, her friends decide to stay longer than they had planned. This enables the female protagonist to discover her father's archaeological activities and also his drowned body. After this discovery, her friends leave her, and she is also upset by her loss to leave the cabin. Now, alone on the island with the memories of her dead father, the protagonist undergoes some terrifying experiences. At the end, the lover comes back to her to take her to the city. Quote, "What's important is that he is here, a mediator, an ambassador, offering me something, captivity in any of its forms, a new freedom," she ruminates. Unquote. So, search for a new freedom, obviously, is one of the themes of this superficially simple story. As Charles Grace observes in Violent Duality, a study of Margaret Atwood, surfacing is not realistic search for missing person, but a multi-leveled quest for contemporary Persephone for a particular type of freedom. Persephone. Name is used here is Persephone. It's also the story of a nameless female protagonist who slowly comes to terms with the ways in which her personality has been distorted by society. Her terrifying experiences in the island isolation make her undergo a painful process of going back to society, not as a victim, but as self-realized individuals in search of freedom. Atwood has remarked in an interview that surfacing is a ghost story, in which the ghost that one sees is the figment of one's own imagination, which has split off, and that to me is the most interesting and the most obviously a tradition I am working in. Unquote. The ghost in the novel is the protagonist's self, figment of imagination, as she said it. She is psychological suicide, a woman with no name, an artist with no art form, and no past or tradition, and she can recall correctly. There is no past or tradition that she can recall correctly, recollect it. She can neither feel nor communicate effectively. She has a lover she cannot love. She is a mother without a child and a child without a mother. It appears Atwood's woman protagonist has lost touch with the reality of her own life. One of the lies that the protagonist tells the reader, her friends, and her lover, and even herself, is that she is divorced and the mother of a young child who lives with her former husband. What she and we learn as the novel progresses, however, is that she was never married, but rather involved with her married art teacher, who gave her C's in her class, C grades in her class, told her there were no great women artists, and insisted she have an abortion rather than disrupt his life with her pregnancy. Only after the trauma of discovering her father's body in the lake, a dark oval trailing limbs, does the protagonist connect with the other something I knew about, a dead thing, which is her aborted baby. I knew when it was. It was in the bottle curled up, staring out at me like a cat pickled. It had drowned in air, whatever it is, part of myself, or a separate creature. I killed it. It wasn't a child, but it could have been one. I didn't know it. Unquote. It is on page 168. So, like a criminal pleading innocence, the protagonist creates an alibi, to avoid the inevitable confrontations with her own guilt. Surfacing is also a failed artist. The protagonist of Surfacing is also a failed artist, as well as a failed mother. Both her art and her aborted baby represent a section of my own life, she says, sliced off from me like a Siamese twin. My own finished flesh cancelled. The protagonist's lover Joe and his friend David are also failed artists. The film they are making random samples. That's the title of the film that they are making. Film they are making on Way to Island is a parody of art. So random samples depends for its effects on that which is degraded or bizarre in Canada and in human nature. It's stuff moves family on the restaurant roof. The house made of Coke bottles, the welcome sign of with bullet holes, the carcasses of dead animals, and the naked body of Anna, David's wife. To work with cameras, given Atwood's recurrent symbolism, is to cheat at art, to fail at seeing, to exploit the natural, perhaps to steal not only your own soul but your body also. Certainly, that is David's motive, and his perversion of art as he trains his phallic movie camera on his wife's naked body, like a bazooka or a strange instrument of his torture. One certain sign which Atwood provides of the protagonist's ultimate degeneration is the act of destroying the false art, stealing a film and throwing it just in the river, in the lake. In Surfacing, Atwood is highly moral about the function of art, function that art ought to fulfill, whether on personal level or on the political level. Whether art is a perversion or idealism, whether it is a protagonist's childhood drawings of ladies and movie stars, or the equally childlike cave drawings of the ancient Indians our father died in discovering. It represents a key to understanding of the individual and his cultural identity. I quote, "You draw on the wall what is important to you, what you are hunting." This is at page 142. She looks first at the scrapbook containing her brother's drawings and discovers there what she perceives as quintessential masculinity. Explosions in red and orange, soldiering dismembering in the air, soldiers dismembering in the air, planes and tanks, little swastikas on sides, a man-eating plant, engulfing a careless victim, a bubble gum. Protagonist's own drawings, those that precede the movie stars, are in cross expressions of innocent femininity. Page after page of eggs and rabbits, grass and trees, normal and green, surrounding them, flowers blooming, sun in the upper right hand corner of each picture, moon systematically in the left. No monsters, nor wars, no explosions, no heroism. Perhaps it was a vision of heaven. As men destroy women in the protagonist's good and evil vision of the world, no groups and nations destroy and oppress other groups and nations. The military images associated with individual men have their prototype in Hitler. Hitler is one image used. He was the great evil, many tentacled, ancient, and indestructible as the devil. This is on page 153 of the book. But even when Hitler has been reduced in actuality to a few cinders and teeth, his evil manifests itself like a tapeworm. It multiplies. Like a tapeworm dividing. And dividing in the Americans, those oppressors of Canada and the invaders of wilderness. And still as an adult, the protagonist divides people into Canadians as victims and Americans as victors. It's a disease from America, disease from the South. On the first page of the novel, the protagonist notes the pollution and the dying elm trees of her homeland caused by the disease spreading from the South. The Americans invade as hunters, as spoilers. They say they are hunting something, like the fish, they are hunting. Getting any? They ask, referring to fish, but alluding as well to sexual context of a woman. Getting any? It is they, she thinks, who have killed the symbolic heron she discovers on the island. Killed it for sport. The heron is a symbol here. Mutilated and then crucified it. Left it hanging on a tree with a nylon rope. Like something in a butcher's window, desecrated, unredeemed. This is on page 154 of the book. Only after her withdrawal into the forest, where there are no longer any rational points of view, where she loses her identity, worships Indian gods, which she confuses with her parents and experiences vision, can the protagonist truly be born into the adult and must become in order to survive. So Margaret's ultimate vision in surfacing is that affirmation of life is important. Affirmation, sanity and humanity. Affirmation of sanity and humanity. The protagonist's perception of her world has changed. Divisions and polarities exist in life, but they can be dealt with. Even the Americans who are advancing can be watched and predicted and stopped. So most important, the protagonist is no longer seeing herself as a victim, but as human responsible. This above all is to be refused to be a victim. Unless I can do that, I can do nothing. I have to recant, give up the old belief that I am powerless. Because of nothing, I can do will hurt anyone, a lie which was more disastrous than truth would have been. So she is ready to join society, rejoin society, and lead the life of commitment and action. The conclusion, is very much satisfying that she wants to be remembered as a mother, so rich in its texture and so disturbing in its implications. Such thing is, no single study can justify its existence. It's a feminist text which yet transcends all isms, including feminism. It's a romantic novel which yet is hard and anti-romantic in its treatment of such romantic themes as childhood, loss of innocence, and the city versus countryside. It's a ritualistic book with requiring nostalgia for the lust, primitive rhythm, which is nevertheless realistic enough to realize the fragility of the rhythm. It's an elegiac original novel recording the erosion of Quebec's identity. Quebec is the land where the novel is located, Quebec's island. Identity with the assaults by the waves of civilization, machines and success. It's a long sustained poem, a novel with absolutely stunning formal perfections. Incidentally, alas, also a book whose ecological and pagan messages passage will move most Indians, especially those who endow birds, animals, and natural objects with a spiritual sacred status. Surfacing is easily one of the most impressive novels of our time. So the lessons of surfacing are cultural and by Cook's succession political. And one of the lessons of surfacing is that even there are political lines, power lines crisscrossing, even though sometimes invisibly, all human predicaments, be they personal or political, ecological or cultural. Keeping oblivious means forgetful, of these lines are naively imagining that there are acts and stances uncontaminated by politics is ultimately stupid and futile. And while there are pains attendant upon all awareness, especially if you are a victim, awareness is nonetheless the first crucial step towards a meaningful change. That's what the heron does. So, the location is important. The Quebec countryside is important, which is very close to neighboring USA. The presence of USA is felt everywhere in Quebec. That's the land, the region. Like Harley's, Wessex, you have a Quebec land. In people as well as, like Malwa we have in Punjabi. In people as well as in places. And the most important cultural and political lesson of the novel is Americans are against life. This is very important. Against nature, against life-giving gods, against all cultures or peoples that happen to be relatively weak and vulnerable. They are evil, and indeed the book calls them devils. The devil spreads itself like a virus, not just militarily by contaminating people's mind, but by corrupting their tastes, by alienating them from and showing disaffection for their own culture and country. This is what Americans does. Indians going to America sometimes despise their own country. So, in short, by displacing their value system itself, this promotes the growth of postage culture. Postage culture is very important. Postage is a literary or other works of art which is composed in the style of another author, musical composition made up from various sources. This is called postage culture, a purposeless, schizophrenic, and unauthentic medley of culture, which is fake, superficial, and imitative. Predictably, this culture ensures postage people people whose language, fashion, values are all borrowed, cliched, soulless, all imitating American. There is a new dimension of imperialism. Its inevitable product of the power-line political bossism or big brotherism, which refuses to confine itself to politics but permeates all spheres. Thank you very much. Any questions, please? You are most welcome to ask. If you have any questions regarding the presentation given to you, you are most welcome, please. This is my request to you. Yes, Ganita Sharma, Ramandeep Kaur, Harmeet Dhaliwal, Yogita Sarwal, Faguni, Gurmeet Dhaliwal, and two others. If you have any questions, you are most welcome to ask. By calling it just informative is nothing. You just ask some questions if you have. Thanks, sir. Thank you, thank you, thank you, sir. No doubt. I also thank you for your participation and for listening to, for having patience to listen to me. Anything else? Ganita Sharma, Ramandeep Kaur, Harmeet Dhaliwal. Harmeet Dhaliwal, thanks, sir. Yogita Sarwal, thank you, sir. No, you asked some questions. Faguni, thank you, sir. I liked your thanks, all right. But if you are actually involved with the text, then you can ask some questions if you feel like. But then depends on your own reading of the text. That's very important. That sort of thing should be read by you. It's a very great novel, greatest novel Canada so far has produced. That's the greatest book that Canada has so far produced. Of course, Rantan Mistry's Such a Long Journey is also a great novel, no doubt. Rantan Mistry, you might have heard of his name. His novel Such a Great Journey is such a journey, such a long journey, is located in Bombay. It's located during the emergency. Chalo, I will not talk about it.